live stream on our Vishwaneedam platform also. So thank you so much for your kind participation for today's Swadhyay Sahachakra dialogue. It is a very interesting topic, and we got a lot of response from all over India. And on behalf of Vishwaneedam Center for Asian Blossoming, I, Randhir Kumar Gautam, welcome our chief speaker, Professor R.S. Deshpande, who is a well-known economist, and he has been a former director of very important eminent institute called Institute of Social and Economic Change, Bangalore. We welcome you, sir. We welcome Professor Gianluigi, Professor Kedar Sharma, Professor Anant Kumar Giri will join soon, Minati Pradhan ji, and all friends co-present here. Let me give a brief introduction to our honorable speaker. Professor Deshpande is a well-known economist, and he has a deep understanding of economics. He has been in many institutions, part of many academic committees on very different issues, very important issues. He was also a former Rajiv Gandhi National Fellow, Indian Council of Social Science Research, ICSSR, and before that he was also director of ISEC. Professor Deshpande steered the mega study on I request respected participant to kindly mute themselves so that we can avoid disruption. He has a very famous study on farmer at millennium and completed many research studies. He has authored many books, more than 17 books, and more than 140 research papers. So he has a well developed and also engaged social thinker. So thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation to share a thought on your journey, and also a very important topic, economics and literature. So I request you to please start your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you all. And since this, my computer takes one of two things, either the audio or video, and in between there will be there gets a disturbance when both the things are on. So audio, I have to keep it on because it's a lecture. Video, I give you my glimpse in the beginning itself so that you can see what this man looks like, and then I'll shut it off so that I can speak very easily. Now, today's topic is something economic, the social science and economics and literature, but I would treat economics as one component of social sciences. It's one component of social sciences because most of us, we believe in this compartmentalization of knowledge. We believe we were not having this compartmentalization of knowledge when we began seeking knowledge as such. In Gurukul system or in ancient Indian learning system, there is no compartmentalization. Compartmentalization was an imposed characteristic by the West, especially from the Macaulay, or even before that. We always had learning as the base, and learning was multifaceted and interest driven. There is a difference between multifaceted and interest-driven learning as against teaching and learning. Because in the first one comes learning alone. So social sciences or economics, it deals with all the social sciences equally. In fact, there has been a lot of overlapping between sociology and economics, between culture and economics, between political science and economics, between anthropology and economics, between history and economics. But then, in order to keep one compartment as economics, we stayed with it. And within economics, then we started building branches. Now coming to literature. How do I connect literature with economics? Essentially, literature is a mirror of the society. Anything that goes on in the society is reflected is observe truthful picture. What he also bring out the nuances, the finer points, references the society appear in the society. When you see Chomandudi, a novel, it is something which was written by Shivram Karant. Shivram Karant wrote Chomandudi after observing the plight of somebody who is lower caste and who had to stay out. Had one important thing. He had a daughter, and the daughter was something but no land. The landowner or the landlord opening up the stands of rural in say that you read with Chomana. Chomana is a name. You live together with Chomna in order to understand what is the intensity of discrimination that a person feels. His loan is written off by the landlord, and he comes to know why it was done from his daughter when she narrates the story. And this is something which opens the eyes, and this shows how the society is classified. When sometime back, when I was invited in Pune University to talk about the farmer suicides, and since it was Pune University from Marathi, these novels and all the structure that was prevailing at those times when the writers wrote those novels. It begins with a novel which is written or which is based in Vidarbha region of Maharashtra. And as you know, Vidarbha is the region which had highest number of suicides. Then it was essential to understand what were the conditions. And this was in somewhere around 55, 57. The story is there is a farmer who has a land and who cultivates cotton. He sells cotton, and his faith in the land is so great. But then he has also belief in the society. He has an old mother, and mother has a belief in the God. This man gives cotton on faith to a middleman, and the middleman says that he was bringing the money and he was looted. The story is false. The middleman is telling the lies. At the same time, this Bairambo, his mother says that I have got a dream that I must feed the entire village. And this son of a great mother, he says, okay, we'll do it. We'll do it. And in doing that, he unfortunately incurs a lot of debt. Because of the debt, his land goes. But then he doesn't commit suicide. He runs away from home and takes sannyasa. This is the 50s. Then we come into 60s, where we have something like Jhada Jhadora. Jhada Jhadora is a novel by Vishwas Patil. And Vishwas Patil wrote two novels, very interesting ones. The first one is Jhada Jhadora, and second one was Pangira. Jhada Jhadora comes as the development intervention comes in the villages. And with the development intervention, there is certain prosperity to some families. But then there are certain families which do not get touched by the prosperity, but have lost a lot of things. And very nicely, Vishwas Patil is one of the known, he was an administrator, one of the known writers of Maharashtra. He develops Jhada Jhadora in such a way that what the intervention, I don't call it a development, I would call it as intervention by the state in order to improve with a fair order, with a fair objective, to improve the lifestyle of the population in the villages. A irrigation project, and then the land is acquired, roads are laid, but certain families benefit and certain families don't. And in this one, the one which does not benefit is having a problem. The boy has completed his graduation. Now we have come to 60s and 70s. Boy has completed graduation but does not get graduation in agriculture sciences, but does not get a job. In order to get him a job, certain things have to be done. The novel goes slowly in the boy's family. And since he is a BSc, he gets a girl from a very rich family. But afterwards, they find out that he doesn't have a job. Finally, the boy again runs away and starts doing errands on a railway. This is the break. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, yes. Now you are audible.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Not. There was a break. Yeah. Now it's okay, right?
Yes, yes. It's okay now.
One of you keep the mic on so that I'll get the response. I was telling that 82 was a watershed year in India's economic policy. If those of you who were young at that time, 1982, there was a change in the India's marketization process. Before 82, if anybody wants to get a scooter, there are only two typologies, two types of scooters, two makes. One was either Bajaj, which was Vespa collaboration, or Lambretta. There's no other scooter. And then slowly the scooters like Vijay, etc. started coming in. But still, the scooter manufacturer, suddenly the government control went off. And like in Maharashtra, Kale marries a Deshmukh. Then the girl name Vaha Kale Deshmukh, which means she carries both the surnames. Similarly, after 82 in India, we started getting these two surname industries, especially in transport industry, in the transportation. We got Suzuki, Ind Suzuki, Hero Honda, Kawasaki, Bajaj. Now, this is something that our manufacturing has got into collaboration with manufacturers from outside the country. The import started increasing. And before 82, we had only one type of TV called ECTV, Electronic Corporation of India. And it was 82 that we saw Bush TV, Crown TV, Uptron TV, and then a number of different TVs. Now, this particular watershed year is the year where Pangira begins. It shows how commercialization and market forces entered into the households in village India, in the rural India. This commercialization also brought along with it the specific thing, a competition or a demonstration effect. He has or my neighbor has a particular TV, or my neighbor has a motorcycle, so I should get a motorcycle. This kind of commercialization and marketization, consumerism. Now, commercialization, marketization, commercialization, and consumerism was depicted very clearly in Pangira, where then enters the politics, that is, politics as a business. It was in the 80s that politics and earning out of the politics became a very prominent thing, which is also shown in many novels, many short stories, etc. Then comes the 90s and 2000, where there is a beautiful novel, again Sahitya Academy, all these are Sahitya Academy Award winner novels. Beautiful novels called Baromas, 12 Months by Sadanand Deshmukh. Baromas very clearly brings the person and the entire forces of increasing costs in agriculture, increasing ambitions to purchase new things, getting into more consumerism, getting into more commercialization, getting into marketization, and then as a result, the capital was short of, people started borrowing, and the borrowing started increasing. In addition to that, and Baromas brings it very clearly, in addition to that, the state started supporting the farmers. It was wonderful. But the farmers started depending on the state. That was not wonderful, because for anything and everything, the self-dependent profession of farming started depending on the state, and thus the dependability syndrome got in. This is exactly the way Baromas describes, and there comes in the first suicide noted in the literature. Now I come to Kannada literature. In Kannada, Chandrasekhar Kambar had written this Karimai. It's an outside intervention of culture in the village. If somebody comes from outside, and Chandrasekhar Kambar again is a Sahitya Academy Award winning author whom I know personally, and he described me this novel. It is simply that in the village economy, when what Schultz called it as the low level equilibrium, which was at equilibrium, everything was going on very well, and then suddenly one cultural intervention comes in, and this cultural intervention is accepted by some try to very feebly reject it, but finally it stays on, spoiling the entire equilibrium, and that's economics, entire equilibrium of the village. He also wrote another novel which is excellent, Singarava Mattu Armane. That is a lady by name Singarava, and Armane is the Rajwada or the palace. This is showing the difference in the society, how the society changes over time, and that's a sociology. But then there is an inherent economics. Every sociological issue has economics in it, and every economic issue has sociology, anthropology, political science in it. And these are impregnated by the other social sciences, and that's something which we forgot. That was our tradition of learning, and we got into the tradition of teaching and learning, because the teacher's views are imposed on the taught, and thus the viewpoints are, and that was the interesting thing Britishers wanted, because they wanted to teach certain things and you should imbibe that. And there exactly comes the another novel, which is called Avarana and Saratha. These are very wonderful novels, because these are written by a person who is again Sahitya Academy Award winner, Bhairappa. Bhairappa also is a person who studied the Indian culture and Indian mythology in great detail. He writes on Ramayana, he writes on Mahabharata, but then in his novel, when he talks about how the society changes under the pressure of commercialization, under the pressure of the market, and the interrelationships between people change according to the value added from the market or the personal benefits, personal profits that one looks at it, and how the relationship within house and out of the house changes over time. And friends become, and then one of the very interestingest and a Kannada novelist, a very famous novelist, Hasiru Honnu, which is green village, green land mass. Now, this one, he describes the village in smaller and neater details. He has full authority. He was from a village, so he has full authority on how villages function, how people depend on each other. And earlier, you go back to M.N. Srinivas Rampura, the village people depended on each other, and if there is a marriage of one family, all the families participated in the marriage. If there is a shortage of certain funds for the girl's house, the entire village used to get together and provide that fund. It was not loan, it was not debt, there in kind, there is a ಮಳೆಗಲ್ಲಿ ಮುತ್ತುಗಳು, which is the pearls in the rainfall. Again, getting into what village describes, what community is the important novels that we have seen in a different manner. They try to trace the time path of the rural economy, and tracing the time path, the economic changes. And when I say economic, I mean social sciences. I don't mean economics, which means what Adam Smith has described, while trace changes described, or what Robinson has called it. Anywhere and in every aspect, it is social sciences which dominate, because in a village, it is not just economics, it is sociology is important, anthropology is there, political science is there, there is history, and everything goes in a nice manner together. And this togetherness was intersected by two important components. One is market and marketization, and two, the culture and cultural intervention, or I should say cultural aggression. I was getting to the word. Two things, the market and the culture and aggression by the both, changed the village society over time. The novels have traced that, the poets have traced that, the critics have traced that, short stories have traced that, but we have not, because we treat compartment of social sciences as a different compartment. And in this compartment, the literature not to enter, or we need not enter the literature when the two things are talking about the same bloody society. It is exactly the same society about which the literature describes over time what are the changes and how the changes takes place. Literature describes what are the important relationships within the household, how the relationships have changed. Literature describes how the market has entered into. Literature describes how the cultural aggression has taken place. Literature describes how the British learning system has changed our learning system. Literature describes everything that has caused the changes towards worse. Now, with the important thing that I would like to underline in the last 2 minutes is that literature is the mirror for the entire society, and society runs on the aggregates of social sciences. There is no elder brother, there is no younger brother. Many people in my discipline, that is economics, and I should tell you, I am a very indisciplined fellow. Indisciplined in the sense that I did my graduation in honors with physics. I was a physicist. I went to army, came back, entered into economics just accidentally, learned mathematical economics and econometrics, which is technical economics, taught computer programming for quite some time, then changed to development economics, and then to agriculture economics. I finally wrote a lot in agriculture economics, the subject which I never learned in any classroom. I have never passed any examination in agriculture economics as such. So when I was awarded the first two awards, among the first two awards, a fellow of Agriculture Economic Society, Professor Alag and myself, Professor Alag, who is no more, who recently expired, described that how he did his PhD and his postgraduate course in American University in agriculture economics, and how he was interacting with Iowa State, with Cornell University, and how Carl Christ had looked into his thesis. When I was to respond to my fellowship, I said, I'm really sorry. I never learned agriculture economics in my life in any classroom. And that was the learning system of this country, that you learn. I have not seen a carpenter taking a blackboard and a chalk piece and teaching his son how to cut the wood, how to use the saw. I have never seen it. But the carpenter's son is a good carpenter. The blacksmith's son is a good blacksmith. The sculptor's son is a good sculptor. And by observation, we learned. It's very late that new education policy thought that it is necessary to observe and learn, not by teach and learn. Last thing I say, that since I work in some poetry also, economics is not a science. Economics is not a science. Economics is beyond science. It has 8 directions. It has 8 directions, and a multi-directional animal does not capture the very essence of the society, and hence economics is not a science, it's an art. It misses the humanity because its objectivity is mired by the co-sister. Its objectivity is mired by its co-sister, that is subjectivity, which dominates the ethics in economics. And empirical evidence economics, but it's malleable. It can be changed according to the test, like the pudding in the house. It can take a shape that one desires, and therefore economics is not a science. It's beyond science. Generalizations are too myopic in every social sciences, and therefore The society is multifaceted, multi-pronged animal. No one can capture it, and therefore economics is not science, it's an art. With a generalizations are seen with a keyhole from the society, and it's closeted in the dark room, locked from outside, pleading for open access, but replicability is never achieved, and therefore economics is not a science, it's beyond science, it's an art. Economics is therefore an art, and art is the literature, and where we always use a shaky dart, and therefore economics is an art. Thank you. Thank you. Are you able to hear me or no?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay, okay.
It was a very inspiring lecture.
I said half an hour I'll complete.
Yes. Hello, Professor Deshpande. Good evening. Hello,
Good
Randhir,
evening.
all friends. So, Randhir, I have been on the road, but now I can share a few thoughts for a few minutes. Is it okay?
Yes, please, please share.
So, thank you for Professor Deshpande for your reflections and finding the bridge between economics and literature. The path that you have shown us is realizing the sense of integrality, that the economics as a discipline is not fragmented, or it should not be, and social science is also not. That is very interesting. And literature as description of society. At the same time, literature is also pointing to a desirable society. You describe the crisis of society and how literature is a reflection of that. But literature also
there is a lot of problem with audio. There is a lot of problem with audio. I don't know whether my problem. So
okay. I am on the road. Therefore,
okay.
I'm doing my best. So literature is not only the mirror of society, but literature also points to different paths of desirable society which does not yet exist. So that way, this normative question in literature also finds a resonance with normative ways of thinking in society. That is also a normative economics. Secondly, if we look at the economics pioneers like Marx or even John Maynard Keynes and Adam Smith, now all these people, the way though they wrote literature, that writing had a very deep literary path. They used images and, Adam Smith to describe division of labor, or Karl Marx to describe the condition of the proletariat, John Maynard Keynes. So one aspect of economics and literature is, out of many things, that how economists can write in a way which also becomes literary. And that literary mode is able to evoke sympathy, is able to create sensitivity, which is not there in a narrow functionalist or professional way of writing. My third submission is that among the contemporary economists, a few people, make a bridge between economics and literature. For example, Kaushik Basu. So he has written a play, and you yourself, Professor Deshpande, you write poems. So I would request you to bring your own experience of doing economics and poetry. And so these are my three quick submissions that I wanted to share with you and our online house today.
Yes,
I'm
Professor
not able to
Deshpande.
hear anything.
Uh,
Yes, I was not able to hear. Anyway,
okay.
I
Now, are
think
you
it is
hearing?
true. Yes, now I'm hearing.
Okay.
Again, it is off.
No, Professor Anand Kumar Giri was sharing his reflections, and he invited you to share your journey with literature.
Okay. Now, give me a minute. Give me a minute. I'll just adjust this headphone.
Okay.
Yes, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I was interested in literature also during my young days. And like any other person who time goes to poetry, then prose or essays or stories. So I was the editor of our college magazine, and I used to write short stories. But then some of the things which I felt I had written the poem. This poem titled Auctioning. Auctioning is a wonderful process. Auctioning is a wonderful process with pretensions against iniquity in the marketplace. With pretensions against iniquity in marketplace. With a hollow grounding in human ethics, starts with pure economic design but ends in polemics. Auctioned are the love letters, swords, and techies. Auctioned are the love letters, swords, and techies, never to forget players' thoughts, brains, and even babies. Auctioning is a simple word, poised and blunt, with a lot of underbelly, meaning, and pregnant. Highlights beautiful things about the piece, the piece which is being sold, laced with tongue-twisting accolades with imaginary price. Agreed price is repeated thrice. Once, to wake up. Second, to check up. And third, to crush all the enshrined ethics that added with spice. Another one which I wrote sometimes on agriculturist. This is Annadatta. Have you ever heard the dulcet of the shovel, the thud of the plow, and the call to the bullocks? Without a sentence, word, or a groan in a vowel, he works, and ever works. Every part of the day and night, every day, dull or bright, he works, and ever works. Many a songs were written and sung. Many a songs were written and sung. Many a policies were made and hung. He stays put in the knee-deep soil with the fragrance of the sweat and his toil. He works, and ever works. In the summer days under scorching sun, in the scorching sun, in pounding rain and the winter run, penny wise and foolish by pounds, he waits untiringly on the same grounds. He works, and ever works. With a fond hope that a day will rise. With a fond hope that a day will rise with those in power will finally realize his sweat will be rewarded and make him happy and wise. Behind that fond marriage, he works, works, and ever works. There is another one, which is sometimes we use certain words without knowing them. So this is a poem titled Words. Staring at me from the celestial angles with kaleidoscopic lenses and sharp edges. Too many lanes, intertwined phrases, words have numbed me over ages. Words have numbed me over ages. My sanity has never awakened. Many idioms have emerged and anesthetized. Struggled for the meaning through the words and pages. Words have numbed me over ages. Words have numbed me over ages. Depth of the sea and width of the sky. Never had I thought I would dare to lie. But these divulged out like leaking pilferages. Words have numbed me over ages. Sharp are the meanings with blunt contours. Smoothly they traverse, shattering the tendons. Shake all the mortals, rogues and sages. Words have numbed me over ages. Words evade my stare and keep my heart away. Words evade my stare and keep my heart away. Play a deadly hide and seek, I must say. At times, these go over lines, paragraphs, and pages. Words have numbed me over ages. I thought this must be sufficient because poems are not something which is liked by everyone.
Very deep, sir.
Thank
Very
you,
deep.
Professor Deshpande.
We have with us Professor Lekha Chakraborty, and she also writes deep poetry. So I would request Professor Lekha Chakraborty to also share some of her reflections.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me for this World Poetry Conference, with focusing on economics and literature. I was listening to the points, and this is my first exposure, in a sense, to speak about the economics and literature. And, you mentioned, I started writing poems, as a kind of a tool to communicate what exactly has happened to me over the years. And it was a struggle to communicate, and I was trying to redeem my pains, because I knew no other way either. So that's the way it happened in me. And I do believe that there are two major equilibriums in life. One is the passion which you follow, and that is, of course, economics, and the kind of, the tools you try to stabilize and excel in your field. The other equilibrium is the loss of love, kindness, and many things, a sense of belonging in your life, in which you try to find an equilibrium over there. And somehow life balances between these two equilibria. One, the passion in which you try to excel. The other, the inner core of you, which you cannot communicate to anyone, but you struggle to communicate, at least to yourself, what exactly has happened to me and how you can redeem your pains. So that's the way it has happened in me. Then, it is also closely linked to the life experiences one go through in childhood, in adolescence, as a part of my journey in economics, as a professor, as a friend. It is a kind of a narrative style I tried. It's not exactly even lyrical. That's the way I try to take it out. And, in Ohio poetry competition, writing nights, I try to send my poem. That is a morning in Delhi, or a morning in winter. I forgot the exact title. But that I sent, and I was so happy that I was selected, in the final runs of that Ohio competition in poetry. So that gave me a little bit confidence. And of course, it's very precious when Randhir asked me today that, ma'am, he read my poems I posted on the social media, and this recognition came from those unconditional, posting of my poems in the social media. He recognized me and he read my poems, and he asked that, why don't you come for this poetry conference on economics and literature? And I take it as a privilege. And my poems were basically trying to identify as a child what has happened when abandonment happened in life so early, when your dad just leave, based on a triple talaq, in which the child and mother cannot say anything, but you have to compel to live with a mother who is abandoned. Then later on, when you grow up, the kind of, the lost love you try to seek, and how you get rejected, and how you try to pick yourself, and try to identify a path in which you can excel, that it's not only the lost love, but there is a lot of passions in you which you can follow up, which can create an equilibrium in you. So these are the ways in which I try to write, but it's still it's a journey in which I'm trying to identify a language to communicate what exactly has happened to me. And I shared a poem with Randhir on title 1984. Randhir promised me that he will share that poem in World Poet Conference group. And I hope that we can read that and deliberate upon it later. And, thank you so much for inviting me to be the part of this. And I really enjoyed listening to the poems read by the professors earlier to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, madam.
Thank you.
Professor Gianluigi, would you like to share some of your reflections?
Yes, thank you very much. I hope I am audible. I had unfortunately some problems with the audio, but well, it was really very, very interesting, and I have to meditate very much on it. I was impressed, for instance, by the affirmation that, if I have correctly understood, that economics is not science, but it is beyond science, because I find that this assertion is true, is authentically true, but I think that all those who say, on the contrary, economics is science, they have a precise aim when they say it. That is, economics is science, and therefore you cannot do any kind of objections against economics. That is, when somebody says economic is science, so rigorously, I think he has a name behind himself. That is, he's trying to say this is a corpus which cannot be discussed. And therefore, there is always, we can find always this affirmation in many newspapers or economic reviews. Economic is a science. There is no alternative, because there is always this. Economic is science, and therefore we have no alternatives to what economics says. And this is very, very suspect many times. And they refuse to say economic is something which is beyond science. In my opinion, it is not, there is a strong contrast here between what Professor Deshpande says and what economists, for instance, economists of neoliberal tendency, wants to impose to the public opinion. That is, they want to impose economic is a science, there is this and nothing else, and there are no alternatives. And every alternative in thought is false. And therefore, also, there is a contrast in these opinions between, for instance, economic and literature. This is not the case, it's not an accident. If economy is transformed in a kind of absolute science, which cannot be discussed, and which is, so to speak, perfect in itself, it has no influence from outside, it has no ties with literature, for instance, or with philosophy, or with literature. Therefore, economics cannot be subdued to any form of objections or to any form of influence from literature. It cannot be admitted that economics has relationship with literature, because if it is admitted that economics, for instance, has connection with literature, economics is never more an absolute science. That is, I think that what Professor Deshpande says in his brilliant exposition reveals a really very, very deep contrast between all who, as like Professor Deshpande, a determinate, a specific conception of economics, and all the other ones. For instance, there are neoliberal politicians who says, no, economics is untouchable, cannot be touched, and can be judged only through economics itself. And if it is the case, economics has, so to speak, the right and the duty to destroy all other forms of culture, including literature. That is, I think that the conference, the brilliant conference of today evening, is saying us very, very many things on which we have to reflect, because it is the revelation of a profound contrast between ways of seeing economy which are opposite to each other. So this is, of course, there were very many. I'm enthusiast of the conference, of course, and I thank you very much. And well, there are, of course, very, very many other subjects to be underlined, but I stop here in order to give more space to the other people. Thank you very much anyway. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Deshpande.
I really agree with it, but there was a lot of disturbance in listening to what was being talked about. I was not really able to hear continuously because it was breaks in between. But then,
Yes, Professor. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
So, Professor Gianluigi, would you like to share the thought in maybe 1 minute?
Well, I have to write it because I have taken only some
Okay.
notices. The question
Okay,
is,
okay.
so synthetically, the question is, in my opinion, there are two conceptions of economics. The one conception is that of Professor Deshpande, with whom I agree personally, who says economics is beyond science. The other one, the neoliberal conception of science says economics is science, and economics cannot have any kind of relationship with literature. It is not admissible that economics is influenced by literature, that it has connection with literature, because if it were so, if we accept that economics anyway has contacts with literature of a place, of India, for instance, then in this case, economics is no more an absolute science. That is, there is a precise intent of some economists and of some economist storms who says economics is an absolute science which cannot be objected, and therefore it is complete in itself. So this is what I wanted to say, but I can of course write you my notices and send you tomorrow perhaps. Okay, I am sorry, I have myself problem with the connection. I'm sorry, but I can write anything. I have everything. I have my notices. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. May I say something? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, please say.
Yes, I can hear.
Okay. There are 8 basic tenets of science, and that has been given in the history of science and always repeated everywhere. The first one is ethical neutrality. Now, in social sciences, there is hardly any ethical neutrality that we find, because social science is institutional, and in the institutional domain, the first thing that emerges is the relationship between X and Y and Z. And if this relationship is stronger, then it is likely that ethical neutrality is compromised. And that is shown in the novels, that somebody's son is appointed, even though unfit to be in that position. But simply because the son is it belongs to a family, the entire public supports it. There is something called empirical evidence, which is essential in science. Science must provide empirical evidence. Now, economics also believes in empirical evidence. Problem. This is from sample, and in the text of sampling theory, the sample has to be a representative sample. Society is stratified across all the axes, and there are not only 4 axes. There are multiple axes on which the society is fragmented. There is a caste, there is age, there is a gender, there is a community, there is a region, there is a religion, and all these axes, society is fragmented. We collect, saying that this sample is representative. Unfortunately, it can never be a representative. Sample is finally a sample. And when it becomes representative, when the error, that is error of sampling, is within certain limits. And what is that limit? They can fix at 1%, they can fix at 5%, and it depends on the subject. Therefore, it is impossible to have empirical evidence which is objective. Therefore, economics is more an art than science. Replicability. There is an inflation in UK, there is inflation in India. Now, the UK central bank takes a particular step in UK in order to control inflation, but the same steps will not be applicable in India. Lost control on inflation. The inflation grows or drops on the institutional parameters and flow of money and cash in hand. And cash in hand with the digital economy is difficult to be controlled. Earlier, cash in hand was able to be controlled. Digital economy, it is difficult to be controlled. Therefore, again, replicability, predictability. Predictability is a lot talked about. The Lehman Brothers collapse. In fact, Lehman Brothers were the best employers of the best econometricians who were the best predictors in the world. The same thing happened in 1930s when the recession struck. It is only after the recession struck that the economists started analyzing post-mortem of recession. So again, it is non-predictable because it has an hyperplane. It works in a hyperplane. It doesn't work in a plane or 2-dimension, 3-dimension, 4-dimension. It's a multi-dimensional plane with which it works. Universality is certainly, one doesn't have to argue about it. As far as generalizations are concerned, again, what happens in the economy of Tamil Nadu cannot happen in the economy of Andhra Pradesh or in Maharashtra. It will be different. And therefore, on the count of tenets of sciences, economics is an art, not a science. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deshpande. And I request Professor Lekha Chakraborty, madam, to kindly share some of her reflections on the very topic of today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I was listening to the debate of art and science, but the ultimate objective of, economic policy makers within the constraints, or, we are all operating within that constraint maximization framework, but their, ultimate objective is economic growth. There is nothing beyond that. If we are thinking that the ultimate objective of economics or the economic policy is economic growth, your growth in GDP, then I think we are having a very partial approach to life or to economics regarding that. I do believe that we need to take up the ultimate objective of economic policy to beyond growth paradigm. When it is beyond growth paradigm, of course, the humanitarian consideration and the human development aspects, or basically the economics will become humane. And unusual economists, they start working on the humane aspects of economics. So there, it is a people-centered, people-mattered, it is a people-mattered policy initiative. So when economics becomes a people-mattered policy initiative, then, people are at the core of it. And how do we value that? As professors mentioned, we can, of course, do millions of models to get a, outcome on that, and millions of models that will be precise. And of course, it will be in a multidimensional framework, and it's a very thorough, rigorous quantitative methodology. But I also do believe that there could be qualitative works. And in the Cornell, when there was a debate on the poverty, what kind of methodology and approach we economists should have towards the poverty, there was a debate whether it has to be quantitative or whether it has to be qualitative. And ultimately, there was a consensus that, a story told by as I mentioned, what happened to us is that we don't recognize the fact, that the qualitative approach, like, a compelling story told by a woman or a child, what can be its contribution to economics when compared to running millions of regressions? Then the consensus was that one story told, that compelling story, is worth running millions of regression. The inferences that is coming out of that story told by a woman or a child or a poor, that is also equivalent to running hundreds or millions of regression to get an outcome. So I do value that there should be a consensus of a Q-squared approach in economics, in which we give emphasis to both quantitative and qualitative aspects, or quantitative and qualitative methodology, and the approach towards economics should be given respect, dignity equally. So in that space, the stories, the kind of, the Shravan Samskar, because many of the things are orally handed over to generations. So those kind of aspects, those kind of methodology also carry a huge weightage. And even in the literature, economic philosophy written by Joanne Robinson of the Cambridge University, in her, that economic philosophy book, what I understood is, in the beginning page, she mentioned about what goes around comes around. And she was trying to articulate the term utility, the basic term utility in economics. And, I do remember, I read when I was in college, I do remember one particular statement made by her in that economic philosophy book, in which, utility, that's a metaphysical concept. When you try to pen it down or pin it down, it becomes just philosophy. So that's a way in which we can think about the economic terms, or otherwise, it will be just spinning down to business of life or utilitarian approach. But the same word utility also has a philosophical dimension or a metaphysical dimension. So when I think about economics from these perspectives, I do understand that there can be a beautiful confluence of science, art, and humaneness, in this space. In that way, there could be a confluence of economics and literature. So that's my take, limited take on this topic. Thanks again, Randhir, for giving me this space. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was very deep and very insightful. We request respected participant to please raise their hand, or you can also write in the chat box. Yes, I can I request Chawolu Monisha to please share your thought.
A very good evening, sir.
Very good evening.
Yeah, actually, we have really a wonderful literature, especially many Indian philosophers like Swami Vivekananda Garu, and he wrote many books like Karma Yoga, Janana Yoga, and Jnana Yoga, and also the teachings of Buddha enlighten us the meaning of life. So their literature is completely different when compared to the new literature. Of course, the new literature is really wonderful because it's based on the author level of perception. We are really getting many in number of books, but which kind of literature or mode of literature has more weightage, and which approach of literature will reach the audience more and get little change in everyone.
Okay. So, Professor Deshpande.
I think he's not there.
Okay. So, Minati Pradhanji, you can also share some of your reflection, and then we can wind up the session.
No, I just wanted to know something from him. I just wanted to know how his diverse learning has helped him. He's not there now. So my reflection is about this subject is, hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Hello. I have very limited knowledge about this, but still 1 or 2 lines I can say, like economic can borrow from the literature, to present their own ideas or to criticize the alternative doctrines. I wanted to explore little bit. Literature is always influenced by the society, or in the per se you say it is like from economy, how we see the conditions and all. But how much of literature has influenced the economics to lay out the rules? That is what I just wanted to know. If anybody can answer also, that is fine. Because it is a complex link. Literature can challenge the economics. As literature serves as a reflection of the economic situation of a nation or the state or any place, you can tell. It all drives the economic progression, but how does this particular thing, what I'm telling, how does it impact?
Okay, so we can invite Professor Ananta Giri to share his reflections on. So Ananta bhai. Maybe he's taking some time.
Yes. Hello, Minati, and hello, Randhir. Now, yes, economics and literature, but along with the issues also, what I was sharing is this style of writing as well as persuasion, because economics is also trying to present a narrative of society. Look at, for example, the whole model of planning or collective property, the role of the state, like from Marxian economics. Now, this was presented in such a way that it persuaded people to believe in this way of economic thinking. Similarly, von Hayek, way back in 1939 or so, in mid 1930s, he wrote a book called The Road to Serfdom. So, as an economist, this language itself, it created a picture that the state-controlled economy is like a serfdom, and it takes away our freedom. So, building on Van Hayek and then Milton Friedman, his writing. So, economic writing creates a story about economy and society, and some of the writers write in such a way, speak in such a way that the story becomes powerful. What was your specific question? I could not hear, Minati. Can you repeat it again?
I know that I was asking that literature is influenced by the society. So how much that that economics rules, I mean, whatever the plans and all those things are laid out, are influenced by the literature. That I was asking.
Yes. Now, that is the point, because economics is influenced by society, but maybe to some extent, because what has happened, the domain of the economy in modern society has a kind of elitist status, that economists and planners, that they think what is good for society. So by and large, their economic thinking and planning, it emanates for their already taken for granted way of thinking that this is good for society. So the the problem is that much of economic thinking and planning is very little influenced by the wider cross currents of society. It has a very limited conception of society. And that reached a critical point when Margaret Thatcher, building on these neoclassical economists like Friedman, he says that there is no society. So there is a relationship between economics and society, but economists themselves, they very rarely reflect that. And only in the critical moment, like the Great Depression in the 1930s, when the economy was collapsing, then economists realized that, yes, we have to do something so that if the society does not leave, where the economics would stay. Similarly, in the 2008 crisis, before that, all these Lehman Brothers and all these companies that Professor
Maybe we lost.
It's muted, I think. It's muted. You can, Ananta, please unmute. It is muted. Hello, nothing is audible.
I think maybe his network is not up to the mark. So we can about I can we can I think is Professor Deshpande is there? No, I think he is also not there. Maybe Ananta bhai?
Hello.
Yes.
You can hear me?
Yes, now we can hear.
Okay, I think we are at the concluding realm of our journey today. So let us move towards the concluding
Okay,
song.
thank you. Yes, so before concluding, of course, we are
But
also.
let me also bring another point. Hello, Randhir. One
Yes,
point about persuasion is that in economics and literature, there is also a lot of work on rhetoric. And there is an economist named Deirdre McCloskey. And so that rhetoric also has become a very important point that we can take into consideration. Yes, please.
Thank you, Ananta bhai. Today it was very inspiring session, and I also wanted to share something, but I think we are also running out of the time. I have read so many contributions by Amrit Sen, but his article on Tagore and his India, one of the best article that I have ever read. And when we think about economics and literature, we can think about these two souls. And if you read that article, you will find, you will not find that he is writing in the so-called language of economics. Of course, he was also trained in Rabindranath Tagore's Shanti Niketan, but the way he writes, he brought so many important poets like Yeats, to Pond, to Anna, Kobsunto. And he also brought so many important ideas of culture, important idea of, say, even something which is a kind of realm of literature. So that is something which is very important. And so even one of his lecture I was listening, he shared that how he understood better economics with literature, politics, culture, religious beliefs, and philosophical analysis, interrelations. So that is also one way of making self of great seeker, and that is something very fascinating which we can learn from Tagore and Amrit Sen. So thank you so much. It was really very fruitful session, very inspiring session. So Minti Pradhanji, please offer vote of thanks.
Susripa is there. Would you like to invite her to share?
Susri Appa is there? Okay.
Yes.
Please, Susri Appa. No, I think she's not there. I saw her, but she's not there. So, Minti Pradhanji, please offer.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Please say.
Thank you, Minati. Time, what I wanted to say may be very short. In 6 seconds, but before Minati.
Not audible.
And very pertinent, that the point that you raised, that how economics has actually reflected and how the interconnectivity and
maybe
into human life, the first and foremost that is as soon as there is life, there is economics. Perhaps it is in that order, comes even before that, before the political science, before the philosophy of life. As long as we eat, we need to earn. There is transaction. There is exchange of currency. There is evolution of currency. There is exchange. There is transaction, and there is economics. Now, coming to a little broader, aspect of it, that how the contribution or how the interconnectivity has been established, like which has been spoken by all our speakers. In fact, Ananta was also referring to that we have seen that many, studying from many leaders, probably we can take the example, I think, what better example than Arthasastra, what better literature than Arthasastra, and what is it other than economics and political science. So also looking at the other side of it, how literature has reflected the economics of that point in time. In fact, all of us who have read Odia, who have read Chamana Athaguna of Fakir Mohan Senapati, the father of Odia novel, what it is other than economics, the kind of economics it reflects. I probably won't be wrong to say that it is more of economics than literature, if I have to give a quantitative measure in that. And last, in a very quick note, from the personal experience, being an investment banker. And so when we start our presentation, most often we start with a point, with a line or a verse of, the important or some of the poets. And that's not just by me being a poet or having a connection with poet. Even those who do not write, those who are not poet, they also do that. And we have all seen that, even the budget presentation had last time started with a very beautiful verse of Tiruvallur. With that words, I have many more points, but with that, let me stop it here. And thank you, Randhir ji, for calling. Thank you, Minati, for asking this beautiful question. It's a contemplation. It should be carried forward. Thanks, of course, to Professor Deshpande, and thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Susri Appa. No, Minati Pradhan ji.
Yeah, as we are all running short of time, so I would like to conclude a lot of debates, lot of disruption as well. I could not hear everything 100%. In between, it was going and coming. So anyway, I'm Minati Pradhan on behalf of Swadhyaya Chakra and Vishwaneedam Center for Asian Blossoming. Would like to thank today's chief speaker, Professor R.S. Deshpande, for his very insightful deliberation. Thank you, sir, for enlightening us about that economics and literature. I also would like to thank our moderator, Professor Kumar Giri. And like every week, so I have run out of word. Every week I say the same thing. So thank you for making us learn all these beautiful subjects. And I would like to thank, special thanks to Professor Lekha Chakraborty for sharing her story and giving her very deep, insightful deliberation. Thank you, ma'am. We are grateful to you. And I would like to thank Professor Gianluigi, as usual, his insightful opinions and deliberations. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I also would like to thank Susri Oppa, Dr. Susri Sangita Misra, and Chabula Manosa, all the Facebook participants and Zoom platform participants for being present with us and learning. And at the last, not the least, I would like to thank our convener, Professor Randhir Kumar Gautam, for arranging and executing all the programs so well. And every time different people, inviting different people to our forum. So thank you, Randhir. And for pardon me if I have forgotten anybody's name, but from the bottom of my heart, I thank everyone. Thank you. Thank you all and good night.
Thank you.